Good morning and welcome to Community Development Grants, Block Grants, February 17 Advisory Board meeting. Roll call, please.
Yes, item 1A, roll call. Committee members Cornell. Committee member Cornell. Okay.
Here.
Oganessian.
Present.
Olivares is absent. Sinanian.
Here.
Chair Markarian.
Here.
Report of Recording Secretary. The agenda for the February 17, 2012 meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee was posted on Thursday, February 9, 2012 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Item 2 minutes. 2A, review of the minutes of the CDBG Advisory Committee meeting held on October 14, 2011.
Do we have an approval?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the minutes of our meeting of October 14th as submitted by the Recording Secretary.
I'll second that.
3A?
I'll take the roll call for that. Committee members Cornell.
Yes.
Oganessian.
Yes.
Olivares is absent. Sinanian.
I was absent, so I should abstain. But
Yes.
so wasn't Mr. Oganessian also? So I'm wondering if he can second or he can even vote on it.
Oh,
We
that's correct.
We didn't know. Only other person present was, I believe,
That's
Olivares.
correct.
and he's not here.
Take
Okay,
that vote,
so
so
perhaps we can
table
move
it.
this item
Meeting.
to the next meeting. Thank you for pointing that out.
Sure.
Okay. In that case, item 3A under reports, receive report regarding second quarter social service performance reports and expenditure rates.
Sir.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the CDBG Advisory Committee, I did email out and put on your desk there the CDBG mid-year performance reports, something you could read certainly as we go along with the interviews, but this basically gives a status report of all the fiscal year 2011-12 CDBG social service projects in terms of the numbers served, their outcomes, or any issues with any of the agencies, the expenditure rates, the amount of funds expended, any pending invoices, and description of the project. It basically is just a mid-year report that we produced based on their quarterly performance reports.
Great. Next item.
Item 3B, receive report on status of federal budget and revised fiscal year 2012-13 CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the CDBG Advisory Committee, you do have in your packet a revised preliminary CDBG funding allocation plan, which represents an additional 25% reduction over the last funding allocation plan that you saw and recommended to the City Council, and that was approved by City Council in November. Back in November, we were projecting a 10% reduction, which translates to a $2,678,000 allocation of entitlement funds. That number has been reduced to $1,938,000. We did receive our official letter from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development in mid-January informing us of that $35% reduction in funding. As you'll see on your revised plan, fortunately, we do have reprogrammed funds that we could add to the funding that will be available for capital improvement projects, so that the reduction isn't as significant as it otherwise would have been. Although I would like to point out that 35% reduction will apply to our allocation for planning, program management, and oversight, or administration. We were projecting an administration budget of $535,000. Our revised budget is $387,000. So that's a very significant reduction to our administration budget. As it relates to public social services, which is what we are going to be reviewing today, we were projecting a budget or amount of funds available of $408,000. Instead, we have $290,000 available for public social services. Again, a 35% reduction and a very significant hit to the program. And that's essentially the update on the status of the budget, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. And as you said, 35% cut is a significant number, and we will have some challenges today and probably upcoming years. But I'm confident that we will work through this difficult decisions we have to make. So,
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may just make one more comment. The reduction to the CDBG funding for the City of Glendale is based on 2010 census data, which is the first time that HUD was able to use a 2010 census. So we can surmise that based on the 2010 census counts in comparison to the 2000 counts, that there is a reduction in the population of the City of Glendale and a reduction in the number and or percentage of families in Glendale at or below the poverty level, and a reduction in overcrowded housing, which are three main factors that HUD uses in its formula to determine allocations for all the communities across the country. In addition to that, HUD decided that HUD would begin using a new data source, which is called the American Community Survey, which is based on extrapolations and estimates of demographic data. And we don't have an analysis of that data, but evidently, again, we can surmise that that data showed that Glendale's population numbers or needs somehow have been reduced. So Mr. Carrillo and I are very anxious to receive more analysis from HUD on their data sources to be able to know exactly where it was that HUD determined that we were warranted a much lower CDBG entitlement. So once we have that data and we're able to analyze it, we will certainly give the advisory committee a report on how all of that transpired.
thank you. Mr. Sinanian.
Just to clarify, the HUD's decision as to how much money would be allocated to the City of Glendale was not made until after our applicant clients had submitted their application. So they did not know the true gravity of the cuts that the funding would have this year.
Correct. Remember, Asanian, that's a good point, and that's probably something we should expand on and clarify. The request for proposal was issued, and the amounts of funding available that we published was based on the 10% reduction. The proposals were received in mid-December, and it wasn't until mid-January that HUD revised those funding amounts. Some organizations called with questions, and they were informed of the further reductions. Those agencies that did not communicate further with our office probably aren't fully aware of the additional reductions.
Yes. And I would like to add that every year there has been some reduction in CDBG funding, and if we total the past 3-4 years, I would say that we've had a 50% reduction.
Very, very close to 50%.
So that is a large number.
But, Madam Chair, this is the most drastic
Yes.
cut, up 35%.
That's right.
That's very significant and puts a good challenge on us here.
That's true. All right, thank you,
And
Mr.
just
Duran.
since we're on this, the total amount that's being sought by the applicants, has that increased or decreased this year as compared to 2011, 2012 year?
I think it has been increased.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I know what the answer. I just want to
Yeah.
go over this again.
But the number of applicants and the amount requested
Has grown.
has grown since last year, and the funds available has decreased dramatically. So, yeah, that's the challenge. All right, next item, please.
Item 3C, receive report regarding financial statements for community organizations.
Brad.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, if I may give a very brief introduction. In February of 2011, we made a report to the City Council and revised some of our CDBG management policies to put more emphasis on our ability to evaluate and analyze the financial capacity and the financial capability of the nonprofit organizations that we work with and provide CDBG funds for. During that process, we received a lot of assistance and technical help and expertise from our internal audit division in the city of Glendale, and they have continued to be a valuable assistance to staff regarding being able to analyze the financial capacity of organizations. And so as part of the RFP, they developed a tool for your use and for our use. And the internal audit staff will be in the meeting today, I think to the end, but they are here to make a brief presentation on exactly what their financial analysis tool is and to see if any of the committee members have any questions. So with that, I'd like to call on Michelle Flynn, the City Internal Auditor.
Thank you, Jess. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Flynn. I'm the City Auditor here at the City. I oversee the Internal Audit Division. I just wanted to briefly explain to you quickly what our process was in helping CDBG committee as well as staff to look at the financials that are submitted this year during the application process. As Jess indicated, we've worked closely with the department, with Community Services and Park staff. We determined that one of the best and most fair and consistent approaches to looking at a series of financial statements from a variety of organizations is to do a series of financial statement ratio analysis. We chose 6 different ones to look at. 4 are more specific to the nonprofit world, and a couple are more generic that can be used for many industries. It's important to note that the financial statement analysis that we did and the ratios that we've provided to you are a calculation based on the information received from all the applicants in their financial statements. Many of those statements were audited. A couple were reviewed by a CPA, and I think 1 or 2 may have been a compilation. Internal audit did not do any verification of those numbers. We simply have taken the data that was provided in those statements and performed the calculations. It's also important for me to let you know that we chose 6 ratios, and that's important because any one by themselves, especially one for 1 year instead of a 2-year comparative as you now have, does not really indicate a fair evaluation necessarily. So you need to look at a group of them. You need to look at a couple of years worth of history, which you now have. So we're hoping that the tool that you do have will help you in your assessment today. I can briefly go through the ratios with you if you like, and give you a little bit more clarification. I'll try and keep it in non-accounting terms. The functional cost allocation, actually if you look at your packet, you'll see a synopsis. Every applicant should have the analysis in there. So I'll just kind of go down the list of those. Functional cost allocation, what this ratio represents is basically the amount of money that's being spent on non-program related expenses, such as general and administrative type costs, and that's in relation to their total expenditures. The percentage that you'll see there represents the percentage that's spent on non-program related costs. Current ratio, that's one of the more generic ones that's used across a lot of industries. It simply takes current assets and divides it by current liabilities. The accounting world and the financial market world has kind of a factor of 1 as a benchmark by which you would want that ratio to equal, which would mean your current assets would equal your current liabilities. Anything above that means that you have more current assets, you're able to pay off your current liabilities quicker and have money left over. And current means within a 12-month period. Excuse me. The third ratio is the debt ratio. Again, this is a more common one that's used across various industries. And what this ratio represents is the proportion of debt that a company has relative to its assets. Again, the debt ratio of greater than 1 indicates that a company would have more debt than assets, and a debt ratio of less than 1 would indicate that an organization would have a ratio of less than 1 would indicate that the organization has more assets than debt. The fourth one is defensive interval, and what this ratio reflects is the number of months that an organization could operate if there are no additional funds received. So in your analysis, you'll see that expressed in the number of months. What that does is it basically takes an average monthly expenditures from the income statement, and we calculate how quickly that can be paid off with their assets. The fifth one is reliance on source income. And what this does is it provides a calculation of the largest type of income divided by the total income. And this just shows you that in the nonprofit world that the majority is going to be a reliance on some type of grant. And we don't have the specifics on one grant. It would be a type of grant. In other words, government grants would be lumped all in one category. So it just shows you that reliance on the main source of income for that organization. The last one is fundraising efficiency, and what that reflects is the average dollar amount of contributions raised from each dollar that's spent on fundraising. So I hope that helps provide a little bit more explanation for you. As Jess indicated, we are available all day today for your assistance. If you need any further information, we'd be happy to help you with that. We can be here or at our desks. We're nearby, and we'll be back at the end of the day as well as you deliberate. So,
Thank you, Michelle. I just have one question. The areas that you examine, like the fundraising and some of the different means to raise funds for the organizations, and do you communicate these areas with the organizations? I mean, do we have a way to let them know these are the categories that we're going to examine? For them to really be careful how to respond to each category and how to fill the application according to our requirements.
I'm going to defer to Moises and Jess on that. From our standpoint, we worked with the financial statements only and did not interact with any of the organizations firsthand. So I'll let Moises and Jess handle that.
Madam Chair, as members of the committee, the agencies were informed we're using this new process. However, it's really numbers, and so it's really the accountants that really do the numbers, and there's really no way of changing anything to adapt to an application. So these are the actual numbers, and these numbers go back to 2009. So they were informed we're using this new, I don't want to use the word formula, but this new analysis of the financial statements. And a lot of them have been very positive as far as knowing where they're at with debt ratios and administration costs. So it is something they could expand on for the next year. This is our first year in going through this process, so I think it's helpful for them. They were told about it, but it wasn't necessarily part of the application process. It is required to have those financial statements submitted to the city.
And if the income statement is not meeting the needs of our requirements, then we do contact them to submit a more detailed income statement, or we don't do that?
No, this is what you receive is what we got, unless there was a year that was missing or something that was not there, then they...
So we don't get involved in the preparation or guiding them how to submit so it would meet the requirements as far as the different
Correct.
categories? No.
Madam Chair, we do not provide financial assistance on the preparation
Okay.
of their financial statements or their audits. Each organization did receive a copy of their financial analysis along with the staff analysis, so they are all aware of what their evaluation is, and it's part of the test, and it's part of the evaluation of their financial capacity if they are capable of preparing reports that are adequate and provide the information we need to be able to accurately evaluate their capacity. So it would kind of defeat the purpose if we found deficiencies and work with them to improve those deficiencies, because they need to be able to have the capacity on their own.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Duran.
And if I might add on that comment, Madam Chair, the requirement now for all the organizations to submit at least a compilation, which is prepared by a CPA, a compilation report of financials, a review of those of financials is also prepared by a CPA, and an audited financials. All three of those, because they're prepared by a CPA and the standards that are established, provide a consistent way of performing or preparing the financial statements, which makes an analysis like this a little bit easier and more consistent, because the financial statements all flow in a very similar manner. The differences you would have would be because an organization would be much larger than a smaller one. They might have a little bit more detailed notes, they might have a little bit more detailed schedules, but the fundamental financials would flow in a very similar manner, so the categories would be very easy to find in the statements.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
Sure.
All right. Move to the next item.
Item 4D, review proposal evaluation process and interview and deliberation protocol.
Okay. Well, I think we have the next organization here. But before we start with the next organization, I would like to remind everyone that in the interest of time, we are allowing 7.5 minutes per organization.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, this item is actually referring to talking about the interview process and the protocol that you're going to be using.
We're not reading 4A? I'm sorry, for 3D?
It is 3D.
Evaluation process.
It's just a review of the proposal evaluation process,
Okay. All right, then I'll refer that to Mr. Moses.
unless you would like to jump to another item.
Move to the next item.
Madam Chair, I actually think you were on the right track. This is meant to engage in a discussion between the committee members of how you're going to be approaching the interviews, and I think you're on track by explaining it. In the interest of time, we do want to limit the presentations to 7.5 minutes of the presentation, followed by 7.5 minutes for questions and answers, and then any other comments or protocol questions that your colleagues might have. But if that's
Yes.
very adequate direction.
Thank you.
Just
Mr. Mannion?
to add and clarify for everyone, following the interview process, unless we express a need for the applicants to remain or come back, there is no need for them to stay here, correct? And after the process, once everyone's been interviewed, then we'll deliberate on each individual application and proposal and hopefully reach a decision.
Mr. Cornell, any comments?
No comment.
We're good to go.
Very good.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
excuse me, just before the deliberation, we have one more item under 4A, an action item. I think that's what Ivers is alluding to, is 4A.
Okay. All right, so I think we do have some reprogramming to do. And we have two options. I think we all read the options would be to either reprogram the unspent money back to the program now, or we can reprogram it towards the end where we complete the interviews. So I would like everyone's recommendation.
I'd like to reprogram it this time so that we can add it to the existing funding.
Mr. Sinanian.
I would actually like to wait till the end and see what the totality of the needs are, and once things are evaluated, consider how that money should be reprogrammed, only because, to be fair to Rosie Goes to Hollywood, it's a great program, and we'll talk about it. But the funding that we're dealing with is just so limited that I think every cent counts. And to the extent that there's other programs, the priority, the frontline programs that need a little more funding in relative terms than others, maybe we can apply that money to them. I'm not saying that's the outcome. I'm just saying these are some of the considerations we need to go through before we decide what to do with that money.
Mr. Corral.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, let me just clarify this report. You do have a copy of the memo. These are unspent fiscal year 2011-12 program funds from Camp Rosie and Mobile Library Services. Both have reprogrammed some of their personnel costs. Camp Rosie because they had some less expenditures in personnel. Mobile Library Service because they actually had to delay the implementation of the program because of a site they were using for their program was closed, and that happens to be Head Start program. You do need to make a decision on allocating to a current fiscal year program, not next year. Does not add to the funds available for next year. This is current year programs, and the options are to make a decision today or RFP out the funds to a agency, but the committee would have to come back and make a decision. The committee can, of course, make a decision today. It's certainly one staff's recommendation that, given the small amount of money, that it be used for one project. That I know that's very difficult, but that could be done at the end of the deliberations, and that way you get a better perspective. All the applicants that are currently receiving, the applicants that are coming today, most of them are current year programs, so you'll see exactly what they're doing, and then a decision could be made. But it is certainly a current year allocation that needs to be made today.
So in other words, it can't go to Rosie Goes to Wall Street. By the way, I apologize. I said Rosie Goes to Hollywood, Rosie Goes to Wall Street. It can't be made to them.
No,
This year
necessarily.
it's a moot issue.
Yes, they already returned the funds.
So, my recommendation, I would still stick with what I said, except for applying to this year, to the balance of this year, as opposed to
Yes.
the next fiscal year.
Yeah. So it has to be allocated to this current year. And Mr. Oganyan, any?
No.
I think, my suggestion would also be to, after we interview all the applicants, then we can decide how to allocate and which organization will receive some of the allocation. But, definitely, we can use this few $1,000s this year. Be happy to allocate it for this year's, Thank you.
I'm sorry, we were supposed to make a decision on this today, right? By the end of the day?
Yeah. Well, that's what we're... do we need to vote on that? Because maybe we should take a vote. No.
No, it's a position that
Consensus.
the chair can
Consensus.
handle.
Okay, Chair?
Yes, Mr.
Yes,
Joanne.
Madam Chair, and not to belabor this, but it would be very important to make a decision today on how to reprogram these funds, because they have to be expended by June 30th. So there wouldn't be a lot of time to do anything other than deciding today which organization you'd like to reprogram the funds.
Yes, and that's what we'll do.
In light of that, the RFP is just out of the question.
Do we need to take a vote on that, or?
Madam Chair, if I'm understanding correctly, you would like to come back to this item and make a decision, make a motion at the end?
Yes.
So at this time, we do not need to take roll call.
Thank you.
Can we make sure that's added to the agenda? We'll move it.
Yeah, after the interviews, then we can allocate this and then to the current number and then start deliberation.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, action item 4B.
Okay, 4B is conduct interviews with social service applicants and deliberate and approve funding recommendations.
Right, do we have the first applicant here? Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to say it one more time, 7.5 minutes per applicant, and we are going to do the Q&A 7.5 minutes, so a total of 15 minutes per organization. Thank you so much.
Or less, right?
Or less.
If we can.
And more.
I mean, we will allocate more time if necessary, too. Yes.
Good morning, Ted.
Madam Chair, if I may, one more comment. We're going to use a timer.
Yes, I'm going to use a timer. Unfortunately, I'm not able to set half a minute. That's okay. So I can do 7 minutes, and I'm going to, at 1 minute, the yellow light is going to go on, and you'll be able to see you have 1 minute left, and then there'll be a beep.
Perfect. All right. Well, good morning, CDBG committee members and staff. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you about this amazing Frontlines organization right here in Glendale that's bringing hope and healing to homeless women and children that are homeless, and many homeless as a result of domestic violence. As you may know, Door of Hope is an organization that has over 26 years of experience helping homeless families and children go from homelessness to self-sufficiency to permanent housing. Our mission is to equip homeless families to rebuild their lives. Our goal is to break the cycle of homelessness permanently. Door of Hope Hamilton Court Transitional Housing Program provides up to 12 months of safe, nurturing housing for up to 13 women and their children at a time. We also provide intensive case management, counseling, child care, employment service referrals, life skills classes, budget and finance, life skills classes in budget and finance, parenting, healthy relationships, housing, tenant rights, and much more. The City of Glendale's homeless count in 2011 reported 412 homeless adults and children living in Glendale at any given night. Of this number, 68 of them were children under the age of 17. Of those counted, 117 indicated that they were members of a homeless family, and 62 women and children reported being homeless as a result of domestic violence. The Door of Hope is a critical part of the continuum of care here in Glendale, working alongside with other key social service providers to solve the issues of homelessness. I'm very blessed to work with an organization that is truly making a difference in the lives of homeless families and children. I'm proud to report that during our current CDBG funding contract year, we were producing extremely successful, measurable outcomes. Within the first 6 months of our current funding cycle, we've served 20 families, including 45 children and 20 adults in our comprehensive program. Over 80% of the women reported a reduction in symptoms of depression as a result of therapy and being educated in coping strategies to manage their depressed moods. 87% of the women have reported being less impulsive and having better control over their emotions, and as a result of the education in emotional regulation skills. Our comprehensive program also includes an after-school program that's for the children living at Door of Hope and also graduates that come Monday through Friday, and they come to our after-school program for a healthy snack, recreation, life skills, arts and crafts, computers, and one-on-one homework and tutoring, and mentors who invest in the children's lives, helping them to improve academically, emotionally, and socially. I was going to have one of the families come and share with us today, but I was advised because of time and for your sake, I will actually not have a family share. But I would like to introduce, I do have in the audience both my program director as well as my assistant program director, who Carrie Ann herself was a program participant, came through our program at Door of Hope Glendale, graduated, and now her and her 3 children are residents here in Glendale, and she is on staff helping other homeless families rebuild their lives. Just yesterday, one of our current families shared with me how she and her 4 children became to a point of almost giving up and losing hope when her and her 4 children had left their abusive husband, left their house, left their home, and everything they had. Now she has hope and a future, and she shared how she was so thankful for Door of Hope and didn't know where she would be if it wasn't for Door of Hope, and most likely she may not be living today, or she would be in prison. Another mom yesterday announced with tears of joy that she was getting her keys today and be able to move this weekend into permanent housing. And just yesterday, another mom just moved into Door of Hope and began her journey of rebuilding her life. These are just a few examples of how your support does and can do, if you so choose to continue to partner with us, make a difference in the lives of homeless families. In closing, I'd like to tell you that, let you know that that our program stretches each and every dollar to help that you would give us. I hope that you've had a chance to look at our financial matrix that the city has provided to you and see how well we use our resources. From the fundraising efficiency of $1 spent for every over $13 raised is a very high percentage. We have a strong capacity as an organization, and your decision to fund us is not going to just cover expenses of our program, but it's an actual investment in lives of families that are homeless, giving hope in a future. Our successes are a direct result of your partnership, and I know that you have a really hard job to do today, and it's going to be difficult, but I plead with you to please consider helping us keep the door of hope open to be able to help as generously as you are able to help homeless families and children right here in Glendale. I'd also like to, as I just heard, request that you would even consider Door of Hope as a possible place to reallocate. Even that small amount will make a big difference from the Rosie reallocated funds. On behalf of all the homeless families and children that we are able to make a difference in their lives, I want to thank you and also just open it up for any questions.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. We'll start with Mr. Cornell.
Tim, from last year, the waiting list to get into the Door of Hope with the economy slightly improved, although I guess on the Main Street level you don't see it. Is the waiting still about par with previous years?
Yeah, sadly, it's maintained just as many or more, and we typically will have almost 20 to 30 families applying for every one opening that we do have, and so the need we have seen continue just as high or higher.
Thank you, Mr. Cornell. Mr. Sinanian?
Yeah. Welcome back, Mr. Peters.
Thank you.
Mr. Cornell was saying that the economy's improved, but today we're not feeling it on the budgetary level,
No.
unfortunately. But I think I was here when you guys were first-time applicants in Glendale, and you guys now are like a well-established repeat applicant. And I just have, I noticed there was some notations in terms of weaknesses, but those are technical. They're taken care of, so I don't really think it's an issue at all. In terms of the actual number served with the current year allocation, and I looked at with the amount that you're asking this year being roughly about 10% less than last year, you're proposing to serve 60 individuals. Well, is it individuals or is it individuals with children? Okay, individuals. So 13. So when we're told that the proposed number to be served is 13, but last year you were able to serve 20 with $19,000. I'm just trying to see how that works, because last year what we ended up actually allocating is $19,000, but this year $70,000 are being sought to serve 13. Or am I getting it all confused? I probably am.
It is confusing because it's true that we do serve 13 families at a time, but throughout the course of the year, it averages about 7 to 9 months that the families will stay with us, and so at least 20 will be served actually in our actual program. As we've actually demonstrated this first 6 months of our current funding year, we have 20 families already, so we're well on our way to well exceed that number that we had proposed last year. So we anticipate the same or similar numbers, hopefully even more this next year.
Okay, thank you. And just on the last note, I noticed that you decreased the amount requested by 10%. I think that must have been a reflection of your expectation of the budget being 10% less. And I can't stress enough, I think we're going to keep stressing this with every applicant, that it's not 10%, it's 35%. At the end of the day, numbers are going to look ugly for everyone. Just want to make sure everyone's ready. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanian. Mr. Oganian?
Sure. How you doing? Nice to see you again.
Good to see you again.
I enjoyed the tour of the program. It was a wonderful program. I think you're doing a lot of benefits for the community and the people that actually you're housing. Quick question. The total program expense annual is approximately $431,000, more or less, approximately?
More or less, yes.
Okay. And we're serving about 20 families with that
I believe it's more than 20 families. I think that's a conservative estimate that at least 20.
So let's
It'll probably
average
be more than that.
Let's 25 families.
At least,
Good number
yeah.
to say. Okay. My only concern is from your $431,000 budget, we're looking at about almost 60% of that going towards payroll.
That's correct.
About 40% of that actual budget actually supports 25 families. Is that
The
correct?
payroll is actually direct service, mostly direct service staff, including our therapist, our case manager, our program director, our after-school program director. Those are direct program cost staff. So
What would you estimate besides the direct programs like person-to-person affiliation? I'm talking about. What do you think each family costs annually to?
That's a great question, and we're in process as an organization reviewing exactly that. I don't have the exact statistic at this point. I don't want to say, but I think we're as you can see in the financial matrix that the city provided, the cost per program versus admin versus funding, and just the organizational capacity is very, very strong. And so when we compare ourselves with other organizations, we did a very efficient job with that. Oh yes, and another extra expense is also we have 24 hours, 7 days a week coverage also. So that's another expense. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Roganian. My question would be how many children you serve. The funding that you're requesting is for the full-time salary of a coordinator. So it's almost half of the amount that you're requesting would go to the program coordinator for children, 40 hours a week. How many children do you have currently in the facility?
Currently, right now, 36 children. 26. 26 children right now at this moment. According to our HMIS data, the first 6 months we served 45 children with the current CDBG's funding cycle.
And they're utilizing the Children's Center full-time?
The after-school
or
program
after-school?
is available. It's an optional program, the after-school program, but there's a mandatory every day in the evening life skills class for the parents to attend, and then we provide childcare during that time as well.
And childcare meaning what ages?
For the mandatory life skills class in the evening, it's infant through teenager. It's all ages. For the after-school program, it's school age.
And this is for the after-school program? I mean, the Children's
It's for
Center
both.
coordinator?
It is for both.
It is for both?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Peters.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Great.
Okay. Thank you
for
very
your
much.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Baca, thank you.
Okay. Next applicant.
The next applicant is Club Jam After School Program.
Morning, committee members. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Gaina Davudians. I am the executive director of the after-school program Club Jam. Club Jam has been operating for 13 years now. Every year we serve over 100 kids in our program, so we have served over 1,000 kids in the last 13 years. What we do at our program, we serve children in grades kindergarten through 6th grade. We offer snack, we offer a basketball court, handball. We also have the children in our classroom, and we do homework tutoring with all of our students, and also have arts and crafts activities and field trips for our students. Truly, Club Jam and the kids that come to our program is my purpose and my passion. We have great relationship with the principals and the teachers, especially with the principal and the teachers at Thomas Jefferson, to the point where the principal of Thomas Jefferson will personally walk over families to our program who he feels that can greatly benefit from our services. And we have different staff that actually walk over to Jefferson, which actually at this point in time 100% of our students are from. So we are in daily contact with the teachers of our students and getting information from them as far as where the students are lacking and need a little bit of help with in their schoolwork. So we are constantly on base as far as trying to help the students improve, and we're getting great feedback from the teachers that the kids are improving greatly in their schoolwork in areas where they need help. And that's our big focus, and our goal is to try and help our students by the end of the year to really improve in their grades and improve in their schoolwork, because this will help their self-esteem if they're doing good in school, and it will encourage them to continue with their education and hopefully ensure a better future for themselves and their families. So I know you guys are already very familiar with our program, so I'm going to go ahead and just leave it up to you guys for questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are familiar. Mr. Cornell, can I start with you?
Pass.
I have no
Mr.
questions
Sinanian?
right now.
Mr. Oganian?
You know what? I was a quick question. I looked at the program; it was wonderful. It was great. I think you're doing a wonderful job. I believe we should spend more time and money and efforts into teaching the children to prevent the other programs such as homelessness, because this will actually eliminate that in the future. It's better to worry about that now, raise them correctly now, than to spend the money later on while they're trying to rebuild their lives. How many kids did you say you guys helped
At this
year?
point in time, we've served 70 students. Right now, we have about 47 kids that are actively involved. We don't necessarily have all those kids on site 5 days a week. With the economy, there's some parents who are working part-time, so the kids may be there 2 days a week or 3 days a week, but we actively have 47 kids right now in the program.
How many staff members? Because I believe when I came out to look at you were overloaded with children.
Right. What we do, we have 2 staff members, plus we have volunteers that come and assist us. So we have 2 paid staff members plus the assistance of the volunteers.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And my question is, how do you verify low-income families? Is there a form? I mean, how do you verify the... Yeah.
Right. Well, there's a 10% that is required that we have the backup documentation. So what I do is if a family submits their application and they have marked as low income status, then I go ahead and ask them to please go ahead and bring some kind of backup documentation. So we're actually, with our program, well above 10%. I think it's like 35% of our families that claim to be low income, we have backup documentations to go ahead and prove their low income status.
And what is the amount that they pay? I mean, I know that you charge for the program per kid.
If they're not low income, then it's only $20 a week. And if they are low income, then they do not pay anything. It's
$20 a month?
A week.
A week.
Yeah, but if they're low income, then it's free of charge.
Free.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And also, with the money that's now available this year too, we would also be pleased if you would consider Club Jam as a candidate to relocate that funds to, please.
Your program is meeting the priorities, so we will consider.
Thank you very much.
Looking into it. Thank you.
I do have a question. So last year you requested $50,299 and we allocated $36,000. How did that impact you? What happened? Did you cut the number of children being served, or did you make up the money?
What we had to do is we had to let one of our staff members go, and I have taken over the role of teacher in the classroom as well as director. So I have just kind of spread myself a little bit more. So in the afternoons where I used to still be in the office, now I'm in the classrooms helping tutor the students. So that's a little bit of how we made up for the cut.
So in terms of the actual impact on the number of children being served?
We tried to definitely keep it still. It's just I'm ending up working a little bit longer hours, but we're trying to help as many families as we can. So if I can put in a little bit more hours and still keep the same number of kids, families, that's what we've done.
Are you having a lot of these children come back year after year, or are you receiving new?
Most definitely. And I am happy that it is the same kids, because that way you're having a big impact on these kids' lives. And just one last thing. Recently, I had a student find me on Facebook, and she sent me a message saying, I'm in college now, and I have to say, you and your program are a big part of where I am in my life today. She said, if your program was not there and if your influence was not on me, I would have gotten into so many problems and trouble, but I was with you, and you were such a great influence in helping me study and learn, and so you get the credit of where I am today. So there's just one story of these kids that they don't forget about us. You know, even when they are 21, 22 years old and in college now, they do get in touch with us saying that, you know, in their own words, it's because of you that we're here. You had a big part.
You should get them volunteer.
Yeah,
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just like
Sorry,
to
do you have
thank.
a follow-up question?
No, it's not a question. I just like to overall thank her very much because I did come out and look at what you were doing. Without people like yourself, we'd be in a much tougher situation right now. So thank you for your time and the effort. Because I believe the first time we went, she had like 25, 30 children. She was running around trying to teach and this and that all at the same time. But
You know, we
thank
could
you.
not do it without your assistance and help. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to remind the commissioners to please fill out the evaluation form. Then we can take a moment. I think we're behind. Okay, we can go to next.
Community Development, Neighborhood Services, Habitat for Humanity, Maryland Mini Park Eco Community Garden.
Could you please state your organization and your name?
Chair Markarian, members of the Community Development Block Grant Advisory Board, my name is Sam Engel. I'm the Neighborhood Services Administrator for the City of Glendale and the Community Development Department. Coming up to help me today and actually do the majority of our presentation is our Program Specialist Philip Eskandar. And I'm going to start off by just doing a brief introduction of what we're proposing because it's a little bit different than what you're hearing, and it is indeed a new project for this year. Over the past year, there has been an increased interest throughout the country, largely because of through the issues you've already heard of homelessness, people not having access to food, and in particular fresh food. The president and in particular his wife, Mrs. Obama, have put an emphasis on making sure that all people in the country, but specifically children, have access to fresh produce and fresh vegetables. This has resulted in a renaissance of an idea that was very popular in the 1960s and 1970s, and that is taking unused or unusable pieces of land in various communities and making them productive so that they serve individual neighborhoods, and in particular the kind of neighborhoods that our block grant programs like to serve by using them as community gardens. This past 2 years, under the kind of the sponsorship of a couple of members of our city council, we've had the community emerge and actually build and develop 2 self-operating community gardens on Monterey Road in the block between Geneva and Glendale Avenue. And the interesting part about all of this is that, and what comes down to what you're going to hear about our project, is that these are self-governing, self-managing community gardens. They're not city-operated. And it comes down to what our proposal is that Philip's going to talk to you about in just a second. We see an opportunity that we don't think is going to come around in the rotation very often this coming year, and that's the opportunity to partner with Habitat for Humanity to develop a community garden on their site. And then when we originally had proposed was working with the Park and Recreation Department to implement the community garden that's going in at Maryland Mini Park. And our part of this is not actually building the garden. The community does that. Our part, and what we're asking for the CDBG funds for, and it's community development in the pure sense, is building the capacity of the community to go ahead and run that garden whenever we step back and turn it over to them and move on to the next one. And that's kind of what we see as this process. This first one emerged at 870 Monterey Road, and we were able to get the community engaged and do this. We were able to step back, and then the second one emerged. We see this as an increasing, as a process that's going to continue, and we're looking for that with your support. And with that, I'd like to introduce Philip Eskandar to kind of walk you through the project. Then, because it's unique, we anticipate you're going to have quite a few questions, and we'll work with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Morning, Chairwoman Markarian and committee members. My name is Philip Eskandar, as Mr. Engel mentioned, and I'm a program specialist with Neighborhood Services. I'd like to take a minute to discuss the program priorities and how hopefully we can express how our project meets the program priorities and how our project provides for the community needs within the city and community of Glendale. The objective of this program is to provide the community members within the eligible areas access to facilities through which they can live safe, healthy, and productive lives through the programs that we're proposing to offer as a community garden. In line with the CDBG program priorities, these goals are met by remodeling a blighted, crime-prone property that's been vacant for many years with help from Habitat for Humanity, and hopefully down the line, a few more gardens without these habitats on them into flourishing self-governing community gardens. Youth, adult, and senior participants, including those with developmental and physical disabilities, will have access to the gardens through which they're able to grow their own fresh produce and supplement their food sources. The Community Health Needs Assessment, which was conducted in 2011 by the 3 local major hospitals, provided information that showed us that poor nutrition, including inadequate access to fresh food and vegetables, provided some of the largest reasons for increased risk to asthma, heart disease, cancer, and stroke. We are trying to prevent these in youth by providing them with access to fresh gardens where they can receive exercise and physical activity and produce their own produce and supplement their food sources, organic sources of vegetables and fruit. Getting out there and learning about how gardening takes place, getting the physical activity that is necessary to maintain the healthy lifestyle that is being encouraged throughout the state and throughout the country and the world, in fact. What we've done is we've looked at the need for this within the CDBG program areas, and approximately 60% of the city of Glendale lives in multifamily housing. These multifamily housings do not offer the residents with access to their own area to grow vegetables or even to go outside and have their own backyards or gardens to be able to run and play in. With the conversion of these vacant lots into gardens and areas for these families to come out and spend time together and participate in the classes that we are proposing to offer and have the participants run themselves and have them learn from each other and the skills that everyone brings to these gardens, these families, the youth, seniors, those individuals with physical and developmental disabilities are able to learn from each other and gain the activity necessary in their daily lives. We've proposed through our establishment of this garden to help develop practices in accordance with GWP and sustainable practices. So youth are learning these sustainable practices by using recycled water, healthy gardening, and planting from young ages, and they can spread that throughout. We've had great interest in the 2 gardens already established with a waiting list that exceeds over 70 families, and we anticipate this type of waiting list in the proposed location area as well as those that we would like to plan for the future. And at this time, I'd like to invite up Sam Engel to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eskandar.
It's a unique project compared to what you're used to hearing, and we see this as we don't see this as an ongoing project. We see this as a one-time opportunity to do this and get it established. There's a bunch of different things that we can't quantify, so they're not in our application, but both of the gardens we have now, the surplus in those gardens goes off, and they are actually donating those to food banks at this point. I can't guarantee that that's going to happen, but that's the kind of spirit that comes up when these things develop. We certainly have a unique opportunity with Habitat for Humanity. There's other things coming up in the future that we would implore you to try and say, this is a neat thing, we'd like to do this one year, recognizing that you have very limited resources. We're using this purely for the social structure of the garden. All of the materials and stuff, as you notice from our application, that's all coming from the community support. There's a couple of things that we've asked for, but as we did with the other gardens, it's interesting what people will give money for. And we anticipate that as we go forward, that the money's going to come forward with that if we're able to develop the structure to support it as it goes on. If you can't fund the full amount, and you see it in your hearts as you go forward to fund a part of that, we would attempt to make as much of it work as we can to help you achieve your goals in these neighborhoods and help us get, as Philip said, access to produce and vegetables for people that live in apartments, the bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sinanian?
Yeah, this one I'm going to spend a little time on, so bear with me. First, I want to thank the staff for doing such an objective job of evaluating the proposal, especially in light of the fact that, obviously Maryland Mini Park's involved, so there must be some overlap between the CDBG department, which is joint department with Parks, right? And this project. I don't know how much overlap, but it seems like there has to be some. But again, very objective job of pointing out what the shortcomings of the application was. And I want to commend you for sort of looking beyond the traditional boundaries of the types of programs that can be provided in our city to deal with issues that we have. I want to commend you for looking in South Glendale. Also because of the density of population and there being more blight there compared to North Glendale. Having said that, I want to ask a question to staff, and in light of their response, have you, again, go over how this project fits or even comes close to fitting the CDBG priorities? So the question is, what are the priority projects, the frontline projects identified? I believe that's been done. It's been identified. What are those projects? What kind of programs are identified as the frontline projects this year? And I believe they're the same as the previous 2 years. I don't know if
I'm going to just elaborate on that. I think what we're trying to say is this year, because of the short budget that we have, we're trying to really look into finding those programs that are safety net, frontline, food and shelter, basic life necessities that, because of the amount of money, it's just very difficult for us to work beyond that. I think that's what you,
yeah, that's what I'm saying,
what our,
I want
But we understand this is a very unique project, and I think it's a very new, creative idea. I think, at least to me, I've never seen this anywhere else.
So can we have the staff maybe
Yes.
confirm or give a little blurb on the frontline issues?
Sure. In general, this year, as reduction in CDBG funding, we've spoken to the committee, of course, about the necessity coming down from HUD and from our own program priorities to really look at, as we have in the past, those frontline safety net programs that are directly dealing with lower income persons, and that there's no question that they're lower income based on the income. And most of those are case management programs, those programs that provide food and necessities such as shelter, some programs that provide very significant case management for at-risk youth. Those that are providing youth employment, for example, are certainly very important safety net programs. But in order to maintain services for especially those that are lower income is what HUD is recommending, and that we're, in our plans, prioritizing, want the committee to look at prioritizing this year is those safety net programs, those anti-poverty, those programs that provide really direct services to lower income residents with, of course, case management and a way of self-sufficiency, because it's not just providing them food, but it's providing them self-sufficiency so they don't keep coming back. So unfortunately, the funds that we have been significantly reduced, and we're not able to fund all our programs that we see, certainly some benefits, but the overall benefit needs to be those that are safety net programs and anti-poverty and self-sufficiency programs, housing, employment.
Thank you. So in light of what Mr. Carrillo just stated, and I just want to give you a chance. I don't want you to walk away and then us having a deliberation and you not have a chance to
Sure.
address that specifically?
Well, a couple of things. It's food. And the first thing that we talked about that came out of the discussion was food and shelter. And without going into all of the studies that talk about, and after the brouhaha a couple of weeks ago with the City Council and other parts of the Southern California community, there are parts of the Southern California community where the primary food source for people is Twinkies and off the shelf at 7-Eleven. This is exactly opposite of that. It provides people in neighborhoods that may not have access, and I'm not saying that we've done that, because in the way the application works, it doesn't really provide us the ability to do that. But healthy food for people that are in our neighborhoods, the access to healthy food for people in our neighborhoods. And in the hierarchy of personal needs, philosophically, food is a primary one. All of the program, I'm in front of you pretty regularly on the code enforcement side. I know your job is very difficult, and I sat here and I told Philip, my Kiwanis Club started Club Jam. We provided the seed money 15 years ago, so I'm sitting here going, gosh, this is great. It's still going. And so I'm sitting here listening to all of this. I know it's hard, and you've got all of these different things that are going on. We look at this, and the activity of the community garden is, the actual garden itself is almost less significant than what emerges out of it, which is that fresh produce and the interaction and the community building that goes on for those garden plots that are there. But what emerges out of that is the leadership in these neighborhoods, which you guys talk about. These are self-governing gardens when we step back.
But is this the right neighborhood, Geneva, Monterey? Because I see a lot of single-family homes, and this is a pretty affluent area. I mean, what is
This
the zip
one
code?
is-
91207.
And you've got the problem. This is, now you're really into CDBG stuff. You've got the problem that we have in Glendale is that even in our neighborhoods that we serve, the underlying value of the property is so darn high that it's hard to find property where you can do this cheaply. That's an available site as relatively close. We're now at the point looking for lots. This one I think has 17 garden plots.
17 is below.
Okay, 17 is below the 134. We're looking for plots now where you can get 4 or 5 on it. It's hard to have a self-running garden doing that because you kind of need a synergy of 10 to 15 people working together. But it's hard, as you guys know, it's hard to find that in southern Glendale. We have people that are very interested in leasing us land to do that, and we're not interested in doing that.
And my question would be...
Is there a follow-up?
Yes, follow-up question. This is a new program, and this started with this particular park which is being completed. How come this program cannot be started with the South Glendale, one of the parks? I mean, this is a pilot program probably with this one particular park. Could you have done the pilot program at the really indigent and different neighborhood to start with and see what the benefit would be?
The original application included to do this at Maryland Mini Park because we had met with the Park and Recreation Department 4 months ago, or longer than that, and said, they had said, can you help us do the community garden at Maryland Mini Park? And we said, absolutely, this is what we propose to do. And we walked through this discussion.
But the suggestion was brought up.
Oh, yeah. And actually, the plan was, at that time, with everybody, that this project would go forward with this program to do both of them at the same time. Recognizing that the Maryland Mini Park is right in the middle of our combined housing community development block grant kind of model neighborhood there on Garfield, Windsor, Glendale, and Brand. You're right in the middle of that. With dealing with a lot that's been a blight on that neighborhood for 22 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was the original plan.
Thank you. So if I'm wrong, correct me on this. $37,850 of the total amount requested is for 36 hours a week program specialist to manage. Basically, it's to hire someone to manage the program. And does that represent 100% of their salary? What percentage of?
That represents 100% of their salary, because yes.
So it's 100% of the salary plus $8,990, which represents 57% of the, I guess, materials used. And the rest of the money is coming from some other governmental source, or?
I would say at this point it's coming potentially from some other governmental source, probably from the community. We have a lot of community that wants to give stuff.
Okay.
It's hard to coordinate that stuff without a person to do it.
And really my question is, what happens if we don't allocate or don't allocate nearly as much as what's being requested? Is the program going to be at risk of being canceled? Are you going to look for other sources? Do you have any sources on the horizon?
What I anticipate doing, and we've gone through this with some of the other programs in the past, is going back to City Council saying, you've directed us to make this a priority. One way to work with the resources we have with the city is to start with the CDBG Advisory Board and say, how does this work into your program of activities for the year? And say, they were able to do this amount, but they couldn't do the full amount. Can we come up with other things? Or they didn't feel this was within the program priorities at all. How then do you want to do this? And that's what we want to do, because we're getting strong direction from the City Council to proceed with these kinds of things. And I know, and I've worked regularly with CDBG because so much of the rest of neighborhood services is funded with that. I know the difficulties every year. This year is particularly difficult. I know the difficulties you face every year with all of the competing programs that come forward, and your heart goes out to everybody. You try to figure out how can you make the best possible use of the resources that are there. I recognize that. This, I think, is the start of a process, saying if you have the resources and you feel that it meets at least this part of what your program priorities are, that's what we would do. We would do as much as we can with the money that you have. I'm always going to look to leverage whatever money that we can get. If you were to say, well, at the end of the day, after we've done everything, we've got $12,000, hypothetical number, I'm not saying, we got $12,000 left, could you come back and do that? I would tell you yes, and this is the outcomes that you could expect from that.
Okay.
That makes your job any easier.
Thank you. Mr. Oganesian?
Quick question. From the previous developments of this kind of programs, what age group would you say actually uses the facilities? Because it seems to me it would be more of like retirement age, people who don't have don't have backyards, but, want to have some place to be gardening and stuff like that. It seems to me that would be the
Catering to seniors.
Yeah, is that correct?
And actually, we've had a very diverse group. We have the majority of our gardeners, I'd say roughly about 70% of them are families that come out and do this as a whole. And the age group is centered somewhere between I want to say 20 to 30, because we do have quite a few youth that are under 10 years old that come with their families, their parents, and garden. And we do have a few that come that are above the age of 60. I wouldn't say more than 10% of our gardeners are over the age of 60. The majority are families, and I would say roughly 70% are family activities that come out and do it in groups of 3 plus, all the way up to 5 or 6.
And the reason for that was because the money's so short. I wouldn't want, if it's decided that some portion of the money will go towards that, I wouldn't want it to be spent on some kind of, after school, some kind of enjoyment program for people that have nothing else better to do. You know what I mean? That's.
And let me address that, because this is an important question for what you're doing. It comes back to how we view this. This is community building. Our job is to get the initial garden set up, get the initial people set in there, get their bylaws set up, get them meeting, get them learning, like you guys, how to work with each other to accomplish what they do. There's phenomenal things that come out of people working together to do that. What has happened with the other garden, and Mr. Oganesian, I want to tell you this, they do get together to socialize because they've formed a bond in a community, and it's a phenomenally powerful thing. As a matter of fact, we are no longer involved in the operation of that, and they will come and tell us, we have decided this, and this, Mr. Engel. And when you create these self-governing organizations, that's what you want. You want them to develop this kind of community leadership. So one of the things that's emerged out of it is this social networking that happens there, but that's a positive, to my mind, that's the positive part that's come out of it, and actually one of the things that we see as a positive part of the program. And I want you to realize that's what we envision. In answer to your question.
If I may just very briefly follow up as well, the two gardens that are already established on Monterey are one block west of Wilson Middle School, and this current garden that we've proposed on Geneva is about one block north of R.D. White Elementary School. And from both particular locations, from the Wilson Middle School, because the students walked back and forth past those two established gardens, they ended up discussing with their teachers that we recognized yesterday at our community event, Miss Elizabeth Vito, who then communicated with us that her desire to establish a garden on the campus property, which now they have a garden as well, that the gardeners from the youth, she gets the students in the middle school to garden on their campus, and they operate a garden that we have helped them facilitate and continue to provide them support for, and that is the type of relationship that we see building as well from R.D. White to this particular garden because of the proximity.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell, any questions?
Yes, all the people that have the opportunity to work for you comes to no surprises as far as your ingenuity and trying to do something in the South LA area. And I applaud you for that. And one thing I was happy to hear that was in the packet that you submitted, that you're more flexible now in being able to receive partial funding instead of all or none basis. So the organization you were talking about, it seems that was the Community Garden Council. I just had some questions on the security of the gardens, since there are going to be food involved in that, the irrigation, and also do the residents have to bring their own garden tools? Do you supply the water? If you can maybe elaborate on that a bit.
Real briefly, because that's a whole point of discussion. LA Community Garden Council is the governing body in Los Angeles County that administers all community gardens. It's a wonderful thing. It was set up by the estate of Tom and Ethel Bradley. Tom Bradley, former mayor of Los Angeles. What they did with their life estate as they passed away was set up this foundation which provides the umbrella insurance for community gardens throughout Los Angeles County. We in Glendale participate as participating gardens in that, whether it's this one. Every one we open becomes another garden in that. So we're carried under the umbrella insurance policy for that. We pay the premium, but the umbrella policy is with them. That's how that works. What we found out with community gardens is we've had no security issues. Part of what happens, as you've seen with the gardens on Monterey Road, if you've looked at them, is they are fenced. Every gardener has access to that, as do 4 or 5 city staff people, but beyond that, it's a closed environment. So the security isn't particularly an issue. The gardeners actually, once they're in the garden, pay for the water themselves. The city does not provide that. And what that means is that we're naturally teaching conservation, because as I talk to you, we step back from the organization once it's set up. They have a budget, just like each of us has to do in our home lives, is that checkbook has to balance at the end of the month. So if they spend too much on water, then they can't spend what's in their budget for other things. And they manage that themselves. Sometimes we have to poke them a little bit and say, maybe you shouldn't be doing this, but our job is to help them do that. And that's real briefly how it works. I know you've got a lot of stuff to do, but I could spend an hour on how they really function. I want to stress our part is really getting them up and running and governing, and that's what we're asking for the money for. I think all of the materials and resources will come in. One part I didn't answer. People give us money it's real easy to collect money for the tools and equipment. That's something that is real easy. I wouldn't even ask you for that kind of stuff, because people want to give money for that kind of stuff. And that's not a part of our proposal.
Thank you. I think we need to move forward.
Really one quick question. Your description of how it works sort of sparked a memory in my mind. Last year, there was some controversy in a report in all the local news about City of LA cutting most of these community gardens. Are those the gardens on the same program that we're talking about now? Because of budgetary issues, of course.
Let me address that. City of Los Angeles provided a real education for us before we got started. What they did, and you guys know this in Glendale in particular, is we don't have a lot of vacant land. Matter of fact, and I quote this all the time, is that out of the 60-some thousand parcels of land in town, on the flat part of Glendale, there's only 56 vacant lots. So there's not a lot of opportunities to do that. That's different in Los Angeles. What Los Angeles did is they went on private property to do this. And so where they got themselves into trouble is when the private property owner wanted to reclaim the land for their own use, and the gardeners there were claiming that they had a proprietary right to continue to use that. We are not doing that. Thank you. I want to make that real clear.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for hearing us.
Thank you.
The next agency is the Salvation Army for the Zone After School Program.
They are not here.
Madam Chair, yes, I don't see the Salvation Army. I did send a message to staff to get in contact with them.
Okay. And I think I saw the next organization.
Yes. The next organization would be Path Ventures for the Glendale Housing Now program.
I'm sorry, what are we doing? Do we bypass?
Yes, they're
We're
not
gonna
here.
come back
so
to
we'll,
them if they
yes,
come in?
we will.
Show up, sure. When?
And don't forget the evaluation forms, please. Okay, so we're moving to the next one. Please state your name and the organization, please.
Gabrielle Waring, Path Ventures. So I'm here presenting the Path Ventures Glendale Housing Now program. Basically, Path Ventures is a partner of Path Partners. We work to establish affordable housing in communities. The Glendale Housing Now program basically works by we master lease 13 units in the Glendale community from private property owners and managers, and we place chronically homeless and disabled clients in those units. Our clients come with an extensive history of homelessness ranging from 20 to 5 years. Our clients are coming straight from the streets of Glendale. They're referred by partnering agencies in Glendale. So our program basically serves the need of affordable housing for Glendale in a quick way that doesn't depending on building housing, because we lease apartments in the community. Our clients, basically we have 3 goals with our clients, which is to attain residential stability, which is to increase income and skills, and to maintain self-sufficiency. We work with our clients because they're coming from such an extensive background of homelessness to basically do what it takes to maintain an apartment. That means keeping their apartments clean, dealing with disputes with their neighbors, how to communicate with the landlord and get things solved. And in terms of income and skills, we work with clients on increasing their income, whether it's applying for mainstream benefits, focusing on employment skills, and just increasing and education skills. We also work with our clients on achieving their personal goals. For a lot of our clients having such an extensive history of homelessness, it's a big question to ask them, what do you want to do now that their lives are set on survival of getting their everyday needs met? They have a place to stay, they have food, they have our support and case management. Our case managers are a big part of our program. They work with our clients on establishing these life skills, increasing their income, increasing their educational skills, and increasing employment skills.
Thank you.
Our program did begin in 2006. We've been running this will be our 6th year.
Okay. I'll start with Mr. Cornell.
I'll pass.
Mr. Sinania?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Gabrielle.
Hi, Gabrielle. Welcome. Do have a few questions about the amount of money that's being requested. It's a couple of $1,000s more than was requested last year, and last year of the $45,470, you were actually allocated $9,542. I again want to, that's an increase in the amounts requested, and I just want to stress the point that there's a cut of 35% in our. I'm smiling, but I'm crying inside.
I know.
Just want to make sure you understand that. Having said that, so with reality, having something that we have all have to deal with, what happens if, again, you don't get as much as you ask for, which
Well, in reality, we did not get as much as we asked for last year. Our program continues to run.
And how did you manage to continue?
We are funded, 80% of our program is funded through HUD, through a grant, and the rest is through our private fundraising and other revenues from our organization.
Okay. And if you were not allocated as much as you're requesting this year,
we would continue to do what we did last year, which is private fundraising and other revenue sources. I mean, even though last year we only received $9,000, it definitely helped in pursuing the goals of our program and continuing our program.
okay, and I really appreciate that, you guys being active and making sure you're properly leveraged.
Yes.
Funding sources. I want to ask staff if they have any comments about the response to the weakness, whether there's anything more comments to that, or are you content with the response to the one single weakness that was identified in the evaluation form?
Yes, we did receive their chart, which essentially was left out of the application. It's not certainly a significant part of the application. There's some numbers that provide the status of their current project and previous project. So yes, it's satisfactory.
Okay.
All the other items were, as you noted, on strengths were noted as well. So.
Thank you.
And our strengths are that we do kind of, as the Glendale House homeless count went on this year and last year, the need for affordable housing in Glendale has been well demonstrated by that survey and by other agencies and the Glendale Continuum of Care.
Is the service that you provide in any way, does it in any way overlap with any other of the programs that are in front of the CDBG committee today? For example,
Doors of
Project, yeah, exactly, Doors of Hope. That's
Doors of Hope offers a specific transitional project to victims of domestic violence. Our program is similar in terms that we offer housing, but our populations are very different. Our program is permanent supportive housing for chronically homeless, disabled people.
Okay, thank you.
I will do a follow-up question based on your comment. I see that your population is chronically disabled individual with mental health sickness,
Yes.
mental health illness. These patients, I would say, do they qualify for some kind of a disability homes or some kind of a different setup?
I would say about 80% of our clients do receive SSI.
Okay.
So in terms of different setups, some of our clients do express greater need for more support. Our program does work with those, because on SSI it is, whether it be $800 to $600 a month, that's not enough to afford to live on your own in the community. So our kind of helping them sustain an apartment is
How about
necessary.
mental facilities for them? I mean, if they're chronically ill, mental disabilities, they probably are under, supervision of a physician,
And
or
90% of our clients are under supervision of a physician, receive mental health services in the community.
okay, but they manage to live on their own.
They manage to live mostly independently on their own in terms of taking care of their daily needs, but our program in our case management has been instrumental because we still help them accomplish their goals in the program, which is to maintain housing, and that's where we kind of come in to work with landlords and the clients to come to I would say a good place where they can maintain and continue their relationship of them maintaining house. Now, if we weren't there for a lot of our clients, that would not be the case.
And what is your turnover? I mean, how many people stay with you for years, or do you have them get better and move on to, or get employment, or move on to on their own? Or
Some of our clients have moved on to employment and moved on to their own housing. A lot of our clients that we've that have exited the program have been because, as you've stated, a lot of our clients do have mental illness that they do demonstrate a need for more support than we can offer. And sometimes our program is not the right fit for every client. And sometimes they do need more support in terms of mental health facility.
yeah, and you have 13.
We have 13 clients.
13 clients. Thank you, Mr. Oganesian.
Oh, you actually asked the question I was going to ask. But the 13 actually brought up a question. Are you supplying 13 because there's only a certain amount of people that need this? You don't have a lot of need for this? Or is it just 13 because it's 13?
That's what our funding allows for right now.
But if you, for example, if your funding allowed for, this is a program specifically in the city of Glendale, am I correct?
For this program,
This
yes.
program, yes. Okay. If your funding allowed for 50 people, would you have that necessity right now?
We would. We probably would find 50 clients to fill the program
within.
And these people, they're homeless because of their mental illness. They cannot pay for their own apartments, or is this they're homeless because of their own?
I mean, that's a very interesting question. In terms of homeless, for a lot of our clients, it is because they fell out of employment, they lost their jobs a few years ago, and they've been homeless for a long stretch of time. And it's just really integrating them back into the community. A lot of our clients, that was because of mental illness symptoms. And what we've seen, even with our clients with the most extreme mental illness symptoms, is once they're in housing, they improve. And it's also with the help of mental health care that they improve as well.
Thank you.
And your facility is in Glendale, right? The units,
Yes, all of our units are in Glendale.
but they're individual units. They're not just
Individual
one.
units, no.
Okay.
I have,
Which is a big part of our program because it works on integrating our clients back into the community of living in with other individuals.
I have one question here overlooked that I had in my notes regarding veterans. Do you handle veterans, or do you refer them to
We have
another?
we do have veterans in our program, yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
The next agency is Home Enactment Glendale Ararat's chapter, after school tutoring.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairperson Markarian, commission members, staff. My name is Armand Gorgorian from Home Enactment Glendale Ararat chapter. As in the past few years, we have applied funding for our after-school tutoring program, which the funding will help us to serve approximately 170 children, low to moderate income, disadvantaged children in South Glendale area. They will be tutored in English and in math, and they will be given tests beginning of the program and at the end of the program, and thus we will measure their improvement. We promise, as it has happened in the past, that at least 60% of the children will improve their grades by 20%. The 60% is a very low number. We just put it there. In the past, it has been more in the 80s, and we presume that we will continue that percentages. The program will be held at our center, which is at 3347 North San Fernando Road. Some of the commission members have visited it, and it will be Monday through Thursday, 2 hours a week a day for 2 different classes, and the classes will not be more than 7 or 8 kids in each class. I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I'm sorry, what were the hours again?
5 to 7, Monday
2 hours
through
a day?
Yeah, but each class will be only 1 hour. There will be 2 classes. Actually, there will be a total of 12 classes with 6 tutors. Each tutor will have 2 classes, either Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Gorgorian. Mr. Cornell?
Yes, wanted to ask, Armin, considering New Horizons, and I know you got that overflow last year, are you still feeling that effect of the overflow from New Horizons on your classes?
Mr. Cornell, last year, middle of the program, when whatever happened between CDBG and New Horizon, I was approached by the staff to add some new members, and we did that. There was funding, additional funding to do that. This year, we were funded probably about 35% of what we have applied, so we had to stop at a certain number. So if there were more people out there that we could have served, I cannot say for sure, because after that number, whoever came, we had to refuse accepting them because we couldn't fund them. So when the money was there, and through the staff, we were approached to do that, and we applied. We advertised again. We got additional children for our program. So as I mentioned, the need is out there. People need this kind of programs. It all depends how much we can fund and how much we can help them.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanian.
Welcome back, Mr. Gregorian.
Thank you, sir.
And this is one of those organizations that's been a long time recipient of CDBG funds. Just a comment, I was surprised at some of these weaknesses that were indicated by staff, because I think that's unusual for your organization, especially considering the experience that you do have with CDBG and its requirements. I understand that. Were you the one who was ill?
I was ill. I got ill that day, sir. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend this meeting, and I didn't have enough time to notify somebody else to replace me and attend that meeting.
Okay. And question I have for staff, like I asked with one of the other applicants, whether staff, I mean, I've seen the supplemental responses that have been provided to the weaknesses. Just wanted to ask staff if they've evaluated those responses and if they had any commentary on that.
Well, our staff did review some of the responses provided by all the agencies. And one thing just to note, and this is kind of common amongst all the agencies, those who did not attend the technical assistance meeting, you'll see in basically all of them, 100% of them, there are a lot of deficiencies. The reasons being is that we did change significantly the application process to talk about the importance of the financials, the outcomes, a lot of these items which of course could be addressed if they were in attendance. But nonetheless, the agency did provide us a response, and I think most of them were cleared. I don't think the understanding of the question about other tutoring programs being here in Glendale was addressed. I think the question was, are there other programs available for tutoring programs? For the applicant states that they're the only one, and staff suggested there are other programs here in Glendale. Of course, Glendale Unified School District, Youth and Families program has tutoring assistance. The Zone Academy provides tutoring assistance. As you heard, Club Jam. So there are a number of groups that are providing tutoring assistance, and that was just a remark we made, and it wasn't necessarily a negative, but just to provide that information to the committee as far as other programs that are about there.
Okay, and just a couple of follow-ups and then a question to Mr. Gregorian. So a lot of these weaknesses are sort of interconnected to the mandatory technical assistance meeting, and had there been attendance, you're saying those wouldn't even occur most likely, and is that, did I understand you correctly?
Most likely, we really emphasized and went through in very much detail this year particularly with the agencies. They really need to be, because we knew there was a funding cut already, not as drastic as it is proposed, we received now, but to really emphasize getting started early on the proposal, coming to the second non-mandatory technical assistance workshops so that they get an additional technical assistance for that. So we really emphasize for, especially this year, that we really had to have a very thorough application, that the applications, because of the tightness of the funding, that we really had to be very thorough, very objective, and very detailed as far as what is a weakness and what is not, and what is a strength. And so, yeah, you'll find that some of the applications were had deficiencies, probably because they didn't receive all the information that we provided them.
And the mandatory technical assistance meeting, is that a new requirement, or has that always been part of the process?
It's always been part of the process. It's always been part of the meeting. And we changed, again, because we changed emphasis a lot on the financials. That's why we really wanted everybody to come and explain to them the new process and the outcomes. It really, it's really important for them to attend these meetings.
Okay. And I want to give Mr. Gregorian a chance to address the issue of the overlap of the service that's being, that funding is being requested for here, and as Mr. Carrillo pointed out, and is also pointed out in staff comments, same service being provided by other entities in the city.
Yes, Mr. Sinanian. When I submitted the proposal, I wasn't aware of any other programs that are available in the city of Glendale. But let's look at another way. If there are so many different organizations that are providing this kind of program, this kind of assistance, I believe that means that there is need for that kind of program. None of those organizations are going to be able to do it single-handedly for the whole community. Every one of us is handling a specific portion of the community. So probably, I believe, whatever the staff says, I can't argue with them. There are other programs in the city, but each one of us handled a separate portion of the community. We are concentrating on the South Glendale. Even the schools that we approach through Unified School District, the flyers that we distribute are for the South Glendale schools. So that's what we do. I'm pretty much sure that other organizations do a very good job, and the way the funding is being cut every year, I believe we need so many different organizations to each one of them handle a portion of this problem.
And how many students do you foresee servicing with this?
If we get fully funded, 170.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Oganessian?
No, actually, I was going through it. Every single question has been answered to my liking. You know what? One question did stand out. Because home admin is an specifically our chapter is an Armenian. Are the children 100%?
No, sir. It is not Armenian. It is not. It is perceived as Armenian. We are an organization in City of Glendale. The doors are open for everyone. And specifically, the tutoring program is one of the more successful programs in attracting diverse group of people. So no, it's not all Armenian.
Okay, and this is being done on San Fernando, next to the police department,
yes,
I believe, yes? Does it feel like for the children it's out of the way for Glendale children? No.
So close to South Glendale schools.
Mr. Cornell, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just had a brief comment here. Mr. Goring's been around here in the community, serving it since 1978. And each time I see, including this time, he has a very exceptional, effective track record. As he pointed out, 60% improvement in math skills. He served the community well. He serves the main crux of the area that we're most concerned with, that has a need, and that's South Glendale. So for the fact that, regretfully, due to being ill and couldn't get a replacement, to attend the mandatory pre-bid conference, to me is a non-factor compared to the outstanding services that he has rendered to the community for 34 years.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Cornell.
And I would second that. I don't think not attending you have the reason that is good enough for me. I mean, we want everyone to attend, but it happens. We all get sick, so it would not be a contributing factor in my decision making as well. I think it is meeting the program is meeting the priority in my mind at risk youth. So it is a program that CDBG really, is a priority for the CDBG. My only question would be, when do you think you would implement the program?
When will we implement our program? Usually, again, when it's funded fully, we start in September, as soon as the schools open, maybe within a week or two. But when we do not get funded fully, then we have to delay it. We want to make sure that the classes are still going on towards the end of the school year. So we start in November or December, mostly November, so that we can drag it all the way to May of the next year, so that is the time they benefit the most.
So you want that to be during school year?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And do you have this, you were funded last year. And
15,000
right,
plus.
and that is in works? Are you?
We are doing it, but instead of having 170 students, we have only 67 students. That's the difference.
All right.
Do have follow-ups, just to be fair, because I'm looking at the funding that's being requested is actually more than the amount that was requested last year. You do realize we have a huge cut.
I just noticed, yes.
35%.
I feel very bad for you.
35%. And also the fact that, if I'm reading this last sentence correctly, CDBG request represents 90% of total costs with partial operational cost absorbed by Homenet. And what will be the impact of us having to sort of deal with reality and allocating funds as they're available to us?
We really don't want to lose this program, Mr. Sinania, and we want to serve as many kids as possible. In addition to that 10% that I have written in my proposal, don't forget that there are additional costs that we haven't even brought here, that we endure. The terrain wear at our property, the custodians that are going there, the amount of time that I personally put on projects like this, and you can ask Moises or my case manager. Most people in the city, they know me by name or by my face because I'm here at their office at least once a week, if not more than that. These are not even calculated. So, and I believe you are all aware of all the other different programs that we have in our organization, and we try to address every one of them. If the year is good, if everybody is happy, if the economy is good, and we will get more donations and more fundraising events, so we will have more money to spend more money on the tutoring program. As it is right now, the percentages will be almost the same, 90% and 10%, plus all the others that I haven't written there.
So you would be forced to...
We will have the program. We will have the program, but probably with less kids.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorgorian. There's definitely a need for more programs like this in our community. That's how I see it. And I think every parent feels differently about different programs, you know, the environment that your kids are going to be in. And I think we need to cater as a community. We do need to cater to different families and ethnic backgrounds. And so I think having more is always helpful.
I know your commission has a very hard job to do. I wish you all luck. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Student evaluation forms and. So are we running on time now? Are we?
Just about.
Just about, okay. That's not bad. That's
The
good.
next agency, if you're ready, is Housing Rights Center for the Fair Housing Program.
Well, the Salvation Army shows up, it's going to throw us off.
They're on their
on
way.
their way, so.
Good morning, and to answer your question, yes, you are. Moises, said that he was going to do a very good job, and all of you are to keep on schedule, and I appreciate that as well. So thank you very much for your time and so forth. So I'm Chancellor Al-Mansour. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Rights Center. Excuse me, I have a cough drop in my mouth, so I hopefully won't cough. And I want to thank you very much for your continued participation in our program. We've been providing fair housing, housing discrimination, and landlord-tenant services to the City of Glendale for a number of years. And our funding request is the same as it has been. We are just asking for continued funding for our services. Our general goal is to service at least 700 Glendale residents, mostly through inquiries. They contact us by calling us for the most part if they've had any landlord-tenant issue. We have trained housing counselors that are fluent in Spanish, Armenian, Russian, in terms of our housing counselors on immediately on the phones. So we listen to their calls and so forth. We've also assisted Glendale with some landlord-tenant mediation as well. We did one on a separate note, for instance, for Section 8 recipients as well, to try to help the City of Glendale come to some type of resolution in terms of figuring out who should be able to receive Section 8 as well.
Thank you. Let's start with Mr. Cornell.
Yes. Had some notes here. wanted to ask you, when I was looking over here, I saw on your staff that you have, what was it, 2 counselors. Are those counselors attorneys that advise you as far as tenants' rights?
So we call our counselors with 2 L's. We actually have 4 counselors, and they are not attorneys. Just to kind of tell you about the job market, it's interesting. Our counselors who have been there for years, most of them, a couple of them had like community college degrees, but because of the job market, the last 2 housing counselors we just hired have master's degrees and so forth. It kind of reflects the job market. But they're very well educated, very well trained. They're fluent in at least 2 languages. And we do have attorneys on staff to kind of answer your question in the second part, but they do not answer the phones. They are there to provide training and backup support to our housing counselors and to our case analysts who investigate housing discrimination cases. And if it looks like the case may need to go to litigation, they're there to litigate. So we do have 3 attorneys on staff who will litigate the case, but they're not the first step of where a tenant would first contact. They would first talk to a housing counselor.
Okay, so they're on more or less a referral basis when you need them, that they're there, or you referred.
Well, they're in the office.
They're in the office.
Yeah. They're part of our staff. Our housing, we have basically 4 units. So we have the housing counselors. They're the first step. When a person contacts us or walks in, they would meet with the housing counselor that would do the initial intake to determine, because most of the time, 85% of the time, it's something we can answer the person face to face or on the phone, because they just have a question. What are my rights? Does my landlord have to give me a notice? That type of thing. Do I have to give my landlord a notice if I want to withhold rent? So we can just answer their question. Sometimes they may say something that would either I self-identify that they think they've been discriminated against, or they think that there's an issue. Oftentimes the issue has to do with the fact that they may be elderly or disabled, and they need like a caregiver, but they don't have a parking spot for their caregiver, so they want to ask for a reasonable accommodation so they can get a closer parking spot to their unit. I'm just giving a common example of something that we then know through our intake would require a little bit more time and services. So then the case would go to our case analyst. Our case analyst then, first part, they just call the landlord or the manager and explain to them, look, this is what the tenant requests. We have evaluated it. We ask for a medical confirmation that they do have a medical need to have a companion animal or have a closer parking spot or something like that. Will you provide them for this? Because that is what the California law says you must do. And if the landlord refuses to do so, we'll then follow it up in writing to the landlord to say, this is what the law says, this is what you have to do. Here's a copy of the medical record to prove that the tenant needs this. And if the landlord still doesn't, then we'll take it in-house and we'll evaluate whether or not we want to sue the landlord or refer it to the Department of Fair Employment and Housing or HUD, because they take some of these cases also.
I see here in your packet in reviewing this that the most of the problems are a lack of tenants not paying their rent. And as a result, you have the 3-day notice or a 3-day eviction notice. When a prospective tenant comes to you and they're going to rent, do you go over the rental terms or the rental application with the tenant to be sure that they're fully knowledgeable, since you have 45% of your area in South Glendale that are non-whites, probably don't speak English as their primary language? You go over the terms of the rental agreement so that they're fully knowledgeable about when the rent is due and other factors in the rental agreement.
We do when asked. Oftentimes tenants don't have a copy of their rental agreement before they've signed it, so forth. So if asked, we definitely, that is something we would provide. Something else we can do is we can always do a tenant workshop, so that, if your department gets calls from a lot of tenants and that's a need that they've identified, they want to have a workshop to help them understand the terms of a lease agreement, that's a service we could definitely provide. And we could do it in Spanish and Armenian.
Are you reaching out to landlords too? Because that's a very important factor that you have both ends here.
Yes.
Because it takes two here to be able to understand all this here. It's not always a tenant. Regretfully, sometimes it's the landlord as well. And having the landlord participate in your programs and community sessions, I think, go a long way to close that community gap there. That, so you do have the...
Yes, I agree with you. As a matter of fact, we have a long-standing relationship with the AOIA, the Apartment Owners Association. So they just had a general meeting in Hawthorne last week, in which they had an invitation to the landlords to come and learn about fair housing, and we were the trainers. And then we're going to do one next week in Van Nuys. Same thing. It's the Apartment Owners Association have set it up, and we're the ones who come and train landlords about what the fair housing law provides in terms of their rights and their responsibilities.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanian.
This is one of those programs that I really love enough. Every time you're in front of this board, I express my sentiment. Not that you can tell the sentiment by looking at the amount of money we've allocated to you last year, and I assure you it has nothing to do with how we feel about it, but more to do all to do with the budgetary constraints we have. Because you serve a ridiculous number of people with relatively very small funds, a small amount of money. Having said that, again, 35% cut this year compared to last year. You're aware of that?
I'm not aware of what that would mean in terms of our funding, but I know in terms of general CDBG funds. Yes, I'm very much aware.
Obviously, that's going to reflect on someone, on probably a lot of the applicants, if not all of them. That goes without saying. And considering the relatively small amount, $7,633 that we did approve last year, how do you see, or what do you see the impact of receiving that amount or less?
Well, I'll tell you, the really sad part is that we have 28 contracts with different cities: City of Los Angeles, City of Pasadena, LA County, and everybody is cutting our budget. And even before our last budget cuts, we basically had to use funds to subsidize other programs. We kind of leverage our resources. So, for instance, instead of being able to do a workshop in every community, we may try to pick like one in the Glendale, Pasadena area, and have to try to leverage our resources that way. We did just receive notice that our budget from LA City, which was our large one, is going to be cut by 15%. Last year, LA County cut ours. Every city is cutting ours. So,
by the way, from what I understand, 15% is the cut that they received. Their CDBG program received from the HUD.
Received from HUD.
We have 35.
Yeah. Some cities did not cut us as much because of the services we do provide, because even though we are a fair housing discrimination prevention organization, we do provide a lot of services for landlords and tenants in general. So because of that, and because of the big need for that, especially in these hard economic times and so forth, when tenants have even more questions and they don't have the resources to turn to, some of the cities have recognized that our services are important, and so they find a way somehow to get money through administrative money or something like that. Also, as I'm sure you're aware, when you receive HUD money, there is the mandate to affirmatively further fair housing. So in terms of justifying the funding of our program, the one huge justification for it is that we're one of the few programs that you have to fund, to some degree. Others feel good, and they're things that your community members may need and may require, but you are required to affirmatively further fair housing, just by the nature of receiving HUD funds. So
Is that the case?
Yes.
Yes. Madam Chair, members of the committee, yes, we're required to have fair housing as a requirement for our HUD funds, and so every year we do fund fair housing, and you can see the amount of funds fluctuates a little bit, but not that much. It's generally about $15,000 a year. That's at least minimally required, and we do use some housing funds as well. So let's say if last year was $7,633, we would use housing funds to match the $15,000 minimum that we provide fair housing. So, of course, we would expect housing to continue to contribute. I think they contribute $6,000 this year. So there's a bit gap there.
So we understand correctly, the city is required to fund.
We are required. It's one of the
as opposed
requirements.
to the CDBG.
Well, CDBG is required, I should say. In order to receive CDBG funds, you have to provide services, fair housing services. And
Is
it's
there a
required.
threshold of the funds that has to come from CDBG as opposed to specifically housing?
No, not necessarily a threshold, but being that CDBG is the main requirement, a majority should come from CDBG to fund fair housing. It's in the CDBG regulations, not necessarily in the housing regulations. It's CDBG.
Okay, I'm actually happy. I'm happy about that. Because it makes our job simpler. I mean, we're required to do something. Okay, that one seems like a no-brainer, and also because they deserve it. I mean, but it is. The reality is what it is for us, unfortunately.
Let me just add to Mr. Cornell's comment about the landlords. We did have a workshop, I believe it was in the fall of 2011. We had over 45, 50 landlords come to this workshop. It's landlords, managers, apartment owners, and it was a very good workshop. Went on for hours. And so there is a lot of education needed still in the community. We do have and we'll be forwarding this to the committee as well, analysis of impediments to fair housing that's required by HUD. It's a very thick document that is coming to City Council, I believe, in March 6th. It's not necessarily part of the CDBG Advisory Committee process. It's part of the kind of a planning commission because it's a planning document. So it is a significant document that is really going to emphasize fair housing for the next, again, 5 years. So we'll send you a link to the copy to the document and the report, so if you'd like to come as well. But it is a important aspect of HUD to provide fair housing services. And beyond that, fair housing provides a tenant landlord services, which is really an add-on and a really important process for us to continue to serve renters in the community, as well as owners, but majority being renters for tenant landlord questions. There is not another service that provides that 1-800 number here in Glendale.
Thank you, Mr. Corrello. Mr. Oganessian, any questions?
No specific question.
Well, I think this is an important project and service to this community, having the number of tenants and the owner and the relationship that there is in the city. And are you reaching out to them through the city, or you're doing your own outreach to the community? And
Through both.
Through both.
Yeah, exactly. We have a very good working relationship. So both we get referrals, we get calls directly, we do outreach ourselves,
so
we do mailings, we do flyers, we do direct tenant outreach as well.
If the city receives a complaint, either from tenant or a landlord, do they contact you? Is
Yes.
that the way it goes?
Yes, exactly.
And then you would make the individual person
Yes.
a
We
phone
would-
call that they outreach? Okay.
Individually, yes. That's exactly
Because I
how it
know
works.
that the complaints come usually to the city.
Yes.
Right?
All complaints usually go to the city first, yeah.
And the community members may not be aware of the services, so they probably hopefully go
Yes.
to the city, not the police first, but, or vice versa. It can go
They
either
do.
way.
And I must say, like I said, we have contracts with a lot of cities, so I spend a lot of time talking to
Yes.
city staff. Your city staff is very, very good and very knowledgeable they have all of our correct information, our 1-800 number, our address, and so forth. So some of the other cities, sometimes because of a lot of turnover with city staff and
Yes.
so forth, when I cold call them just to make sure that they're trained and they know how to refer us, sometimes it's hit or miss. But Glendale, I guess because we've had such a good relationship and the continuity has been so ongoing that
Yes.
it's always a direct referral and it's no problem.
Do we advertise their number or their information on our Channel 6 regularly, or
It's
yeah?
on your website. I
Website
know
too?
that as well, yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Great.
very much for your consideration. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the Salvation Army is now here. Would you like to proceed with their interview?
Yes, please.
Okay, Salvation Army, the Zone After School Program.
I apologize to all of you for being so late. I have no excuse, so please forgive me. I
you're
throw
here.
myself at the altar for your mercy.
No problem.
The Zone After School program is a program that is very near dear to my heart. It is so near to my heart because I was a child that grew up in poverty. And so I know what it's like not to have help with homework. I know what it's like to go to bed hungry. I think the Zone After School program helps children have that chance to succeed, helps children have that chance to have a meal before they go to bed, helps children have a healthy and safe place to grow. If you don't know, the Zone After School program offers homework help. It offers time of computer lab, sports workshops. We do special things like manners and etiquette courses with them as well. We always have healthy snacks, except on Friday, which is pizza day. And that's just for fun, but it's a wonderful program. It's 3 to 6 Monday through Thursday, and then the kids get out a little earlier on Friday, so it's 2 to 5 on Friday. Again, it offers children a safe place to be, a safe place to learn, a safe place to grow. I love the program, and I love offering it to the community. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. We have visited the after-school program and the facility, and it's wonderful. The way it's organized and it's being run very, very nicely. So we're very glad. I will start with Mr. Cornell. If you have any comments, questions.
I'll pass right at the moment till I can find my notes here.
Mr. Aganesian, we'll go to you.
How many children attend the program? I'm sorry.
We have 40 to 50 a day that attend the program. There's more than that on roll. I think right now on roll is 72, but not all children. Some children come every Tuesday, Thursday. Some children come whenever their grades are hurting and their parents make them come, but usually 40 to 50 a day are at the after-school program. The only exception would be Fridays, because there's not as much homework on Fridays. Usually on Fridays we run 30 to 40.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay. Mr. Sinanian?
Yeah, I have a question about funding last year was less than half what you requested. What was the impact of not receiving the full funds requested?
We were very fortunate because we were able to get another sponsor, Glendale Adventist Medical Center. Boy, they're going to kill me for messing up their name. Glendale Adventist Medical Center offered to give us money to pay for every child that's in the zone so that we didn't have to charge the children anything. So that made up for the gap that we lost. I would love it if they did it again, but they have not promised it again, but that made up for the gap that we lost last year.
Great, and I'm glad that you're reaching out and in a forward-looking manner. That's all the questions I have. It's a great program. I didn't visit you this year, but I visited you last year. I mean, worthwhile program, great, provides an important service to our children.
Yeah, success track records and very nice application complete. So I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let's take a moment and do the evaluation forms if you haven't.
Yeah, we'll do a break.
Okay, we can take a break.
That is what's
within our
scheduled
time?
next.
Okay, we will do that. See, I'm in the role. I want.
We have a 15-minute break scheduled. If you would like to change that, it's your prerogative.
Madam Chair, I'd like, as long as we have the next nonprofit right here waiting at this time, I like if there's consensus among us to take these people and then have
Are we
a
still
break.
on air? Oh, so
Okay.
we just.
Yeah, I will suggest we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll be back at 10:20. Thank you.